Hey guys, Joe here, and I know it's been a few days since I did another video, and the reason being is I've been fighting a pretty bad migraine for the last few days. Yeah, if you know what cluster headache is, and I think I touched on this one other time, it's where I have a headache that pretty much always stays. It's an extended thing. It could last anywhere from a few days to 6 months, and it comes and goes, comes and goes, comes and goes. Well, the last 2 days pretty much have left me bedridden. I was going to do some hunting and couldn't even get out of bed. Tried to and just basically passed out. So yeah, today I'm finally feeling good enough to make a video. No pickups to show you because again, I didn't go. I'm going tomorrow, but I didn't go today. And I figure what I'll do is I will do the first video on one of the computers and show you all that jazz, and then we'll take it from there. Remember, this first one is the resale unit, the one that I bought in order to make enough money to just keep trying to upgrade to see how good a system I could wind up with just using the money from selling that very first computer, which, as you recall, was a Phenom X6. And I sold that one, just the board and the processor, and then I threw in the i7 2600, which wasn't an overclockable processor, and I sold that one. And now we're on to this system, which is an entire system. Before it was just the motherboard and the CPUs, but this time I actually built the whole system and sold the whole thing. So let me show you what I did, show you this computer, and we'll go over what I did to get to where it was before I sold it. As you recall, at least you should if you saw the other video, which should be up in the corner or up in the corner, I don't know, whichever way it is. But this is a Thermaltake Commander MSI Snow Edition. It's got a few funky edges on it and sharp lines, and it kind of makes it look a little bit cooler, but it's not really a very high-end case. In fact, it was $34 at Micro Center. The reason I bought it was because it has a striking look to it, and when you're trying to sell something online, catching somebody's attention is more important than having like just a clean glass look, because while this does appeal to a few people, it's not what everybody wants for like their first gaming rig. This is a great rig for a young person just starting out who wants to just have a computer that can do most things like internet and mild gaming and have a good time with it. So yeah, for 34 bucks, I got not a bad case. I wish that it had a little bit better cable management choices, because there's no grommets or anything to really hide the cabling. There is this mild, if you want to call it a bridge, it's just an open space back there to tuck as much wiring as possible. However, the PSU sits right here in the way of everything, and this one actually is sitting upside down, and I know that, and it's venting hot air right into the GPU, which is venting hot air right into here, which probably creates kind of a weird zone in here. But that's because this power supply came out of Captain ASUS. Power supply, that's the word I was looking for. But this power supply came out of Captain ASUS, as well as this optical drive. In fact, there are only a few parts left from the original Captain ASUS. I like that it's black inside, but it doesn't help when there's nowhere to hide the cables. Yes, I could have wrapped all these with electrical tape or sheaths or stuff like that, but I just didn't feel like doing that, especially on a cheaper system like this. It's got a 250 gig hard drive with Windows 7 Ultimate in there, completely wiped it, so it's just the operating system, and the drivers, of course, for the board and the graphics card. DVD rewriter out of Captain ASUS. It's no big deal. It's just my case that I have over here does not have a open optical bay. This is an AMD. Well, that was interesting. That was the fire alarm going off. The apartment I live in, none of the stoves have range hoods, which you'd think would be against the rules, but apparently not. Back to where we were. As I was saying, this setup basically cost me just the price of this RAM, which was $34, and this case, which was $34, because this Zotac 750 Ti, which is not a bad card, by the way, if you can get one cheap, do it, wound up costing me about $20. The reason it cost me $20 is because I did sell the GTS 450 that was in there for $40 on eBay. Apparently somebody really wanted a GTS 450. probably so they could run 2 of them or something. Anyways, this setup ran pretty good. It actually pulled a 701 on Cinebench. So as you recall, the very first one I ever did was a 500, which was the Phenom. Then we moved up to 620 on the i7, which was a non-overclockable 2600. And then this one, which I overclocked from 3.5 to 4.2 gigahertz stable, was able to pull a 701. So I'm making progress. Every time I upgrade, I'm getting a step up in terms of performance. I didn't do any other benchmarking for Mark or any of that stuff just because A, it costs money to get 3D Mark and I don't want to spend $30 on the program, and 2, because Cinebench is a good basic ideal for the system since I'm using it for each and every system. Things I would do differently if I was selling the case to somebody I knew. This power supply. I thought it would be good enough because it was powering a 960, but apparently it's not quite good enough when you have to run an 8-pin for the motherboard. I actually have 2 4-pins put together to run the 8-pin. Probably not optimal, but it's what I had to do. Even with this card not having a 6-pin on its own, I think it's still drawing too much power once you get over 4.2. Plus this cooler probably isn't strong enough to handle that kind of an overclock anyways. So for the time being, it's at 4.2, but I think with a good cooler and probably like a 650 or 700 watt power supply, I could probably overclock it to like 4.4 gigahertz. So yeah, that's that one. It's not a bad system. Like I said, it works fine. It does everything that I wanted it to do. And I still have room to upgrade from selling this system because this system sold for $350. Which is not bad. It's a good first gaming system for somebody, a good online system for somebody. You can definitely play games like League of Legends with it, probably not at full settings, but you know, at a good medium setting you can play that, as well as anything else on a fairly decent setting. One thing I had to do that was really complicated over this weekend was I had to do the long way around to reinstall Windows 10 on my system, my personal rig, because my SSD and my 1TB hard drive for some reason were sharing everything, which either I clicked something or the system did it itself. And when I tried to just take everything off of the hard drive and put it onto the SSD, which I had done before, it corrupted everything, killed it all, so I lost all of that. So then I had to bootleg, copy, or clone my Windows 7 system onto my SSD, which I then had to clone onto a 2TB hard drive, do every Windows 7 update because I hadn't used Windows 7 online since 2012, and then I was able to finally get it to upgrade to Windows 10. So I do have it on my 2TB system as well as my SSD, which is currently in my personal rig right now. So I have 2 copies of it, and if I need to, I can always clone it again to my 1TB hard drive. This is an 80 gig. I can also clone it to this 1TB. This was an 80 gig, I apologize. I had them mixed up and backwards in my head. This hard drive was going to just stay in my rig because I was thinking about selling my rig as well, but I changed my mind when I realized I wasn't going to get enough money to make it worth it. I was thinking about stepping up to a Ryzen 1700 or an 1800X system, but the cost of the parts would mean I'd have to get over $1,000 for this system, which, let's face it, isn't worth it because it's not a 6700K, it's just a 6700, and it's just a 960. However, I do have a line on a couple of graphics cards that could up the game for this system, one of which is another 960 for $80. And the other one is a 1060 that I've been thinking about because I can always sell the 960 to subsidize the cost of that one. A 1060 right now in my area, through hunting and looking, I can get a full 1060, not the TI, but a full 1060 Founders Edition or Reference, whichever one that is, for $160, I believe it is. So if I got 100 for that 960, that would mean I'd upgrade for $60, which is not a bad upgrade. So yeah, if you have any comments, leave them down below. If you like the fire alarm, give me a thumbs up. If you would like to subscribe, I'd love to have you along with me, so just go ahead and click on my head thingy, as well as check out a couple other videos if you'd like to. Otherwise, this is Joe saying, I'll talk to you later.